Welcome to the Checkmk channel. Today I'll be talking about the SAML authentication in Checkmk. Starting from version 2.2 in all the commercial editions, the SAML authentication has been integrated with the Checkmk UI. Now in the setup menu, you have an option to configure multiple SAML connections with your preferred IDPs. Automatic creation of the user and the user attribute synchronization happens at the login time. For administrative and debugging purposes, you can have a look at the site web.log. You can also raise the log level in order to troubleshoot any authentication problems. For more technical information like signing of requests and responses and the supported algorithms, you can have a look at our technical documentation. If you are a raw edition user, you can use the SAML authentication at the Apache level via the modauth melon module. This was also described in our documentation. So without further ado, let's get started. For this demo, I'm using the Checkmk Enterprise Edition 2.2p11, and the IDP that we are integrating against today will be Azure AD. Like every integration, there are some prerequisites. So first, let's have a look at those prerequisites. For that, I will be going to the official documentation where we have already defined these prerequisites, and that must be met for the SAML to function. The first prerequisite is that the web interface of Checkmk must be secured with HTTPS. This is we already did. If you look at the URL of the Checkmk instance is already secured with HTTPS. The second prerequisite is we need to make sure that the Checkmk SAML endpoints for the requests and the responses must have been registered with the IDP. We will see that how this is configured on the IDP side. And the third one is the messages directed by the IDP to Checkmk, that is the responses to authentication requests and attribute statements, must be signed with one of these supported algorithms. Checkmk itself uses SHA-256 for signing its requests. So that was the prerequisite. So we can now go ahead and proceed with the configuration of the IDP. For that, I will log into my Azure AD and directly click on Enterprise Applications. If you have opened the Enterprise application multiple times, it will show up in that area as soon as you log in under Azure Services, but otherwise you can simply search for it as well. So if I click on Enterprise Applications, you can already see that I have one application available. To create an enterprise application is pretty straightforward. You need to click on New Application, fill out the name, go to Single Sign-On, and then set up the SAML. It's also mentioned in our documentation how to do that. I can also share you some screenshots here from the documentation where we create an application, we fill out a name. After that, we go to Single Sign-On and start filling out the information that is needed for the SAML configuration. In order to save time, I already created an app. So let's just simply click on the app. We will see that it already has some details like the name, application ID, and object ID. And on the left-hand side, you have the single sign-on. When you click there, you will see already the configuration that has been filled. This configuration is divided into several sections. The first section is a basic SAML configuration, where the first two fields are the required fields, which is the identifier entity ID and the reply URL. It has a URL that is pasted in its value. If you look closely to the how the URL has been constructed, this is basically your Checkmk URL. And after this, that you are just putting a simple slash and putting SAML underscore metadata.py. And in case of the reply URL, the Checkmk URL remains the same. And you just put SAML underscore acs.py !acs. After you have provided these values, that's basically the basic SAML and configuration. Rest are the other things like attributes and claims, which you can see that some claims are available by default. The group claim is something that I have added. It is also possible to have a look at these claim names. These URLs will be used on the Checkmk side for the mapping of different attributes. So we will also come to this page again. So let's go back to our previous page and look at the other section, which is SAML certificates. Here, you can already see that the status is set to active. You have a thumbprint, you have an app federation metadata URL, which will be used in the Checkmk SAML configuration. Either you can use this URL or you could also download the XML and upload it if you have no connectivity to the internet. That is, your Checkmk instance cannot talk to the Azure AD directly via the internet. So it's also possible to download this and upload this XML. Then that's it. If we click on the edit button under SAML certificates, we can also see that the signing algorithm for the SAML response and assertion is already SHA-256, which already meets our requirement. Now we can proceed with the configuration of the service provider, which is Checkmk in this case. So for that, you need to go back to the Checkmk web UI. Let's quickly log in here. And as soon as you are logged in, you can directly go to the setup menu and search for the word SAML. And this is our SAML authentication connection page where you can view all the connections, or simply if there are none, then we can click on add connection. You will see a configuration page divided into different sections. In the general properties, you have to define the connection ID. It has to be a unique connection ID. And then you can choose any name that you like. Since I'm using Azure as an IDP, so I chose Azure as a name here. And then we can move on to the next section. The second one will be generated automatically, so we can skip this and move to the connection. Here, you can provide the identity provider metadata in 3 different ways. Either you can provide the URL, you can download the XML file from the Azure portal and upload it, or you can simply paste the contents of the XML file. Today, we will be using the URL. So for that, I need to go back to my Azure portal where I was using the SAML configuration and scroll a little bit down where we can see under SAML certificates, the app federation metadata URL. I'll simply copy this, go back to the Checkmk web UI and paste this information. So I have now copied the identity provider metadata. The next setting is Checkmk server URL. This I can grab from the browser itself where I have this thing already created. Simply paste in here. The next setting is identity provider connection timeout. I will keep this as a default setting, but depending on your setup, if you're facing some timeouts during read or connection, you can adjust these timeouts accordingly. Under security, you have the option to provide the certificate to sign the requests. You have 2 possibilities here. Either you can use a Checkmk certificate, or you could upload your own company specific certificate. For that, you need to upload a key as well as the certificate. If you are using public certificate, then it should be a single certificate and not a chain. It's also defined in the help menu. If you click help menu, you will see that message here. We need a public certificate, which should be a single certificate and not a certificate chain. Let's switch off this inline help and use the Checkmk certificate. The last and the most important configuration section is under users, which is about syncing the attributes. Here you have to define the mapping. The left-hand side is the user ID attribute that is required by Checkmk. And in here, you need to now provide the mapping from your Azure AD portal. So we go back to the Azure AD portal and directly look at the attributes and claims. If you click on the edit button, you see the claim names. They are in the form of URLs. Maybe with your IDP providers, they are with names. You could also create names here, but I try to stick to with the defaults here where I can see the different possibilities of the claim names. So for the user ID, I'm going to use the name attribute. Let's paste that in there. The second option that you can choose here is the full name attribute. For that, I'm using the given name. And the email address attribute, you also have a claim name available. Let's copy this and also paste it here. And last but not the least is your contact groups and roles. For contact groups, we have 4 different options. The default is do not synchronize. Second one is map value to the specific groups. Third one, user attribute value. And then you have a possibility to use the CN from your LDAP distinguished name string. We will be using the map value to specific group. I already have some groups defined inside the Azure. So I will be using those groups and mapping them to the contact groups that I have defined inside Checkmk. In addition to the by default contact group that is everything, I have also defined 2 contact groups by the name of Linux admins and Windows admins. And now we are going to sync that or map it, what we see for a particular user inside Azure. Here also you need to paste a group claim name. I already see that here on the claim name page. Let's copy this, go back and let's paste this group here. And now you have the possibility to match the attribute. This attribute can be found under, if you directly search for groups, I have 2 groups that I have created in my Azure account. One is Team Linux, Team Windows. If you look at Team Linux, they have some members. Linux user 1 is one of the member, which has an email ID and it is a member. Similar way, the other group Windows has a user Windows user 1 or window user 1. And this will be the user that will be logging to Checkmk and get all the attributes synced from the Azure AD to Checkmk. Let's now go back to the group page where we can copy these unique object IDs against each attribute. So we will copy this object ID for Team Linux and paste it in here. And at the same time, we will attach it to the Linux admins. The second object ID is for Team Windows. We will also copy this and paste it here and attach it to the Windows admins. For the roles, it's also the same process, which I'm not going to do right now. But again, it is a matter of pasting the attribute. You can choose the particular role and then assign those different mapped attributes here. For the time being, I'm not going to use any roles. So I'll simply, I have filled all the prerequisites and now I'm going to save this form. As soon as I save it and I log out from Checkmk, you will notice a difference on the web GUI. Here you see another button now, which says login with Azure. So you still have the possibility to use SAML as well as your LDAP integration, your LDAP credentials, and at the same time, your local users via HD password. I will open a private window so that I can show you the user login via SAML. So let me open a private window, and we can straight away open the demos instance. And now if we click on login with Azure, it will ask for a user ID. So I have to look for the user ID from the screen. Let's go to home, users, and Linux user 1 is one of the user. I will copy the user principal name and just go back to the screen, type in the username, paste the username, and now I will type the password. Let's sign in. And we are authenticated against the Checkmk UI. The user was created at the login time, and as well as the attributes got synchronized. To look at that, you can log out and simply log in via CMK admin and go to the setup and look at the users. If you open now, you can already see that this user was created, that there was a change that was created. In the edit menu, you can see now these are the attributes we specified and they got synchronized. It got a role by default as normal monitoring user. And this Linux user was automatically attached to the contact group's Linux admins. Let's now try a different example with the Windows user, where we close this private window and maybe let's open another one. Let's open the URL. And here we will now try with the different user, not the Linux user 1, but maybe the Windows user. For that, we can also copy the user principal name and paste it in here, press enter, and type in the password. I don't want to use any authenticator right now, so I will just skip that part. And it will now allow me to log in to Checkmk. And at the same time, it also registers a change. So the user was created, and again, the attributes got synchronized the same way. Now we will try another way to use a third user, where I would like to show you some common problems that you may face when you are setting up the SAML authentication. We have another user by the name of foobar, which is added to the Linux group. And I would like to demonstrate some common errors that you may face while setting up the SAML authentication. So this is like any other user, which I showed you before. Let's also copy the username and open a private window. And after that, we will put the Checkmk URL as like before and try to authenticate via this user now. Let's click on login user, put in this username, and if I now put the password, and this will be redirected to Checkmk, you will see authentication failed. Please contact your administrator. I have typed in the right password, but I still get this message. Now, how to troubleshoot this common problem? For that, I can directly go to my Checkmk site and have a look in the var.log. And let's simply open the web.log. If you open this log file, you will see the complete request and response. It's accessing the SAML connector. It's doing an authentication request with the identity provider and the relay state. It performs a get, a response code, and finally at the bottom, it also gives you the complete error message. This is the error message that we are getting. And if you carefully look at that exception, there is a key error here, which says that the email address that is being supplied from this user is empty. That's why this authentication is failing. So this claim email address that we have defined in the email attribute synchronization, it doesn't have any value from Azure. So to fix this, let's go back to Azure, and let's open this user. And if we edit the properties of this user, we can see that it has a principal name, last name, full name is all correct. Under the contact information, the email value is blank. So let's simply paste it We will paste the same principal name and save this now. And now we will perform the authentication the same way. Click on Azure again, ask later, and you will see now the authentication was through and this user was successfully created. So these are some common problems why you may get the authentication failed on the web UI. So make sure that all the users that you're adding, they have all the proper attributes. But if it is not there and you would like to see which one is missing, then raising the log level to debug may show you this information. But don't forget to reset it to the defaults after you are done with your troubleshooting, because this can fill up your disk space very quickly. Activate on the selected sites, and now we have all the 3 users that we needed. Let's quickly have a look at those users. They're all coming from the SAML connector that we defined. And if you look at the attributes, they have the standard username, full name, and email address, the password, and under contact groups, they also get synced. So that's it for today. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you around.